you should do, you can do, and you can't do. That's one thing. He also legislates worldly events. What does that actually mean? He legislates worldly events. That sounds really fancy. What does that actually, like, what's the simple meaning for it? Okay, exactly. That's right on. Exactly. So Allah legislates exactly everything that's going to happen until the Day of Judgment. It's all legislated, it's written. Like Allah commanded the pen to write, so everything that's going to happen is already written. Okay, and what about the third, the final meaning of Rabb? Someone tell me? Come on. It's kind of boring when I talk the whole 40 minutes. Huh? Okay, the one who nourishes. What does that mean?
He provides all the blessings and benefits of all his creation. And
Okay.
He keeps it growing, alive.
Okay, good. Actually, that's really good. He brings things to grow. He takes care of it. He nurtures it. Actually, that's why the word tarbiyah, if you've ever heard the word tarbiyah before, it's nurturing. You're taking care of something. So the word Rabb actually implies that Allah takes care of His creation. This is against some philosophers. Actually, Aristotle had this idea that God created everything, and then He just tipped the domino, and the rest of the dominoes are going. So basically, God created everything, and then He separated Himself from it. That's kind of like the Enlightenment methodology, like when the whole period of Enlightenment came, if you study that in history. A lot of these scientists came with this idea that God created everything, but He just let it go after He created it. He's not controlling it. But Islam has a very different view on it. It's that Allah takes care of His creation. He doesn't just leave it. He takes care of all of His creation, whether Muslim or not. And actually, we were talking about last class, general and specific rububiyyah. General, we're talking about that Allah is the Rabb for every single creation. It doesn't matter whether they believe in Him, whether they curse Him, whether they love Him, whether they hate Him. It doesn't matter. Allah still exhibits rububiyyah for all of His creation. Every single one. So even Iblis, the worst of all creation, we have an example of how Allah shows His being the Rabb to even Iblis. Can someone tell me how? I didn't explain this last time. Yeah.
When Iblis asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for him to stay in earth until the Day of Judgment, and all he did was ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala once, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, fine, I grant it to you.
Exactly, that's spot on. So Iblis asked for something, and Allah accepted his dua because He's the Rabb of even Iblis. Even Lucifer, the worst of all the jinn, the one that rebelled against Allah and was outcasted, Allah accepted his prayer because He's His Rabb. Okay, so it's not exclusive to some creation and not to others. But there's the specific rububiyyah, which is. So for the believers, these three definitions of rububiyyah, which you said, Allah is the true and complete owner, the one who's obeyed, and the one who nourishes and takes care of. Allah will take care of the believers specially because they believe in Him. It makes sense, right? Because Allah, these people believe in Him even though they don't see Him, so Allah gives them special care and He takes care of them and He accepts their dua more and all that stuff. Okay? So then there's even more specific rububiyyah where it's like the Prophet. That's all I said. There's like the Prophet, if he makes a dua, you have to be careful because it will be accepted, right? And those who are closer to Allah, Allah takes care of them more, He nourishes them more. Yes?
Is it true that the one who's oppressed, when that person asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it's accepted, right?
Yeah, there's a hadith for that. Yeah.
So then what about the one who, say she's not really a believer, but she was so and so oppressed by someone else that was a believer, then what would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do in that case?
Allahu A'lam. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, Allah has the power. If He wills, He will accept it. If not, He won't. That's His choice. Okay, so what else did we talk about? Okay, so we're going to continue with class. Okay, and actually I generally hate using PowerPoints to teach. I absolutely hate it, and I hate when professors do that at Rutgers. It's like a pet peeve of mine because it's just like a lot of text and there's not really much explanation, and you just read the slides and you can do that on your own time. So the reason I'm doing it is because I'm not exactly very capable of writing on the board. I've tried for the past 2 classes, so I think this is a little bit easier and it'll be a little more fluid, inshallah. Kind of did it. Okay. So now we talked about rububiyyah, how Allah is the Rabb of everything. So this leads to an important discussion that and it's becoming more important today because there's a lot more people that claim to be agnostic and atheist and don't really want to conform to a specific religion. So it's something that we should talk about. So how does Islam try to prove God exists? What's the method that Islam uses? Okay? Last week we said that Islam really doesn't. It's not like, if you look at the texts and the way Allah and His Messenger, remember we talked about the sources, they don't really try to prove Allah's existence. They don't really make a huge effort. For the most part, okay? So here's why. We're going to talk about some reasons. Why does Allah not do this? Why doesn't Allah spend much time trying to prove that He's God and He's the one that He exists and He's there, and why does He not do this? The first reason is the fitrah. This is a very powerful reason why Allah does not do this. So what exactly is the fitrah? It's the inborn natural disposition. And I defined it a little bit differently last time. I'm using this definition. I mean, it's kind of the same. I'm just using different words. I think it's a little more clear. But basically, it's what every human being has without being taught. It's what is ingrained in every single human being. Okay? And actually, the word fitrah, like if you think about, what does the word iftar mean? Can someone tell me what the word iftar means? Like during Ramadan you have iftar, what is that? You guys don't pass it? No.
Wait, do you want to know the meaning of iftar?
Yeah, what is it?
Well, I mean, I know it's the time when you break your fast.
Okay, so like quite simply, it's like when you break your fast, right? And the word, it comes from the root word fatara, which means to break or to cleave or to split. So linguistically, the word fatara, like this word fitra comes from fatara, which is like to break or to cleave or to split. And also, it's one of Allah's names is Fatir. One of Allah's names is Fatir al-samawati wal-ard, which means that He is the originator, the one that originally created the heaven and the earth. Meaning that He didn't use anything before, He's creating it new, without anything before. And the word futira, which comes from, it's a synonym to the word tabi'ah, which means something that's sealed or closed and it's inside, or something that's printed. It's a part of something. Okay, it's something that's sealed. So that's why Allah says in the Quran, referring to the people that purposely turn away from Him, Allah says, "Bal taba'a Allahu ala qulubihim," that Allah actually sealed their hearts. Okay, and it's a synonym with the word fatara.
What's the word?
Taba'a, ta, ba, and ayn. So taba'a is a synonym to the word fatara. Okay, which is like this root word that we have over here. We're trying to look at what the word fitra actually means. It's about taba'a Allahu alayha bi kufrihim. Allah sealed their hearts because of their disbelief. So this means that the fitrah is something that's been sealed. It's something that's ingrained in every single human being. It comes with the same meaning. It's something that every single human being is born with actually having in them. It's like programmed inside of every single human being. There is no difference, okay, between any human being and having this. So there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, and Abu Hurairah is the one narrating this hadith, he said that there is no one born except that he's born upon the fitrah. Then his parents make him a Jew, a Christian, or a Magian, just another religion, just as an animal is born intact. Do you observe any among them maimed at birth? So what he means by this is when you see an animal, a newborn, do you see it like imperfect? No, it's just like a perfect calf. There's nothing different about it in general. Then Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, he quoted the Quran, which I'm going to cite right now. فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. Okay? And this hadith is in Sahih Muslim. So, every single human being was created with this fitrah. And this ayah where Allah is saying that, set your face in the deen in sincerity, which is Allah's fitrah, which He fatara nas. And remember earlier we were talking about what fatara actually means. It's Allah originated our creation with the fitrah. So He's using two different words here. He's originated our creation with this sealed, ingrained, these sealed, ingrained certain pieces. And we're going to talk about what is actually sealed and ingrained. What are we talking about? Okay? And this is in Surah Ar-Rum, verse 30. Also, Islam is generally called the deen of al-fitra, is the deen of al-fitra. It's the deen of that natural inborn predisposition that every single human being has. It's something that's, it's upon that, it's not different from that. That's why, if you look at the hadith that we quoted earlier, if you see it up there, it says that there's none born except that he's born on the fitrah, then his parents make him a Jew, Christian, or Magian. So it doesn't mention Muslim, because Muslim is in line with the fitrah. It's not like his parents would change him to Muslim. You guys follow that point? So it's like that's something that it's already a part of them. So that's why it's called ad-din al-fitra, which is Islam. The word deen is commonly translated as religion, but it actually comes from the root word adana, which means like to owe a debt. So actually, when you're following the deen, the linguists, they translate it as obedience and submission. So like when you hear the word religion, it's not just religion, like the way it's quoted, like the way we understand it commonly in the Western world. It's like a whole way of life. That's why they say deen is like a whole way of life. So it's something that, it's like our debt to our Creator. It's us paying back our debt by submitting to Him. That's why the word deen is used. So it's us paying back our debt by submitting to Him.
You said it meant debt?
Huh?
You said it meant debt?
Debt, yes. Dana, which means debt, like you're indebted to the Creator. Okay? So, that's also another reason why the Quran is called dhikr. The Quran is called the remembrance because Allah is not telling you something new. Allah is reminding you of something that's already there. Inside of every single human being is this fitrah, which tells them certain things which we're going to talk about, but Allah says this is already there. He's just reminding you with the Quran. So that's why He said, فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. He said remind because the reminder benefits the believers. So it's something it's a reminder of what's already there. Otherwise He would use something like it's a new thing, but it's not. So the fitrah tells us 4 things, which we kind of noted last time, but we're going to talk about it a little more now. It tells us that there's only one God. It also tells us that some of His names and attributes. It also tells us basic morality, and it gives us a conscience. Okay? When I say conscience, I mean, you feel good when you're doing something good, you feel bad when you're doing something bad. Okay? So for the first 2 points, only one God and some of His names and attributes. Allah says in the Quran that when He created us, He said, Alasta bi rabbikum. Am I not your Lord? So one of the names that we're ingrained by knowing is that Allah is the Rabb. We know that. From birth, every single human being knows that. Whether they accept it later on or not is a different story. And we're going to talk about how we can even see that. Even someone that does not accept this fact, someone that says, I don't believe in God and I don't believe in any of this stuff, they will actually show this. And we're going to talk about when they show it. But it also tells us other things. Like, if you hear accounts, which we're going to be talking about, for a person that believes, for a person that does not believe, even the person that does not believe knows that God is all-powerful, that He's all-hearing. So that's why when they're in desperate need, they call to Him. They ask Him because they know that He can hear everything that they say. Okay, so it tells them certain attributes of God. It also tells them basic morality and conscience. Every single human being has this ingrained in them. There was a hadith where a companion, I believe his name is Wabasa bin Ma'bad, he came to the Prophet ﷺ because he wanted to ask about what righteousness is. So he's coming to the Prophet, and he sees like a group around the Prophet, ﷺ, and the Prophet asks him, instead of him asking the Prophet asks him, "Ji'ta tas'alu anil bir?" He said, have you come to ask me about righteousness? And the reason why he was asking is because he's a prophet, and Allah informed him that he would be asking about righteousness. So he said, have you come to ask about righteousness? And then he said, righteousness, al-birru ma tuma'anna ilayhi an-nafs wa tuma'anna ilayhi al-qalb. This righteousness, it's something that you feel tranquil in your soul and in your heart. وَالْإِثْمُ مَا حَاكَ فِي النَّفْسِ وَتَرَدَّدَ فِي الصَّدْرِ وَإِنْ أَفْتَاكَ النَّاسَ وَأَفْتَوْكَ. And sin is something that it causes uneasiness, and it, like the word haka in Arabic means something that literally scratches at the heart. So when you do something wrong, it's something there's like a pain in your heart. You don't feel good doing it. That's why someone that commits murder, they don't feel good committing murder the first time. Later on, when they get used to the murder and they get used to whatever act that they're doing, that's when they start to become acclimated with that. They don't feel it anymore. But in the beginning, people feel it, regardless of whether they're Muslim or not, regardless of whether they believe in God or not. Everyone has this. So this is something that exists in human beings. And when we say basic morality, we're not talking about the whole religion was sent down to clarify what's right and wrong, right? So it's not like every single human being knows everything like straight out what's right and wrong. No, that's not true. That's why we say basic morality in general, like ideas. That's why generally you won't find in a society that people, and I give this analogy, but it's kind of a crude analogy, but for elderly people in the community, the logical thing to do, if we were just purely rational creations, if we were all based on just logic and ration, we would kill old people because they take up a lot of money, they use a lot of resources, you have to allocate time for them, you're not really gaining much back from them in society, they don't contribute to the economy, they don't contribute to a lot of things, and you're just spending a lot of money on that. So logically, people would just say, okay, let's just kill them all, but people don't do that because they know that's wrong. They know that it's just something that's not right. That's why we see this across different societies, across different times. Okay? So how is it shown? I kind of referenced this a little bit earlier, but how is it actually shown? When do we actually see the fitrah come out? So for someone that wants to deny the fitrah all they want, everyone will have this time where it actually comes out. These are two ayats I want you to write down, but I didn't actually include them. I don't know why, but basically the second ayat that I referenced, 10:22, is talking about how when all of a sudden when the waves come, they see like the waves come one on top of another, and they're traveling in the ocean. And Allah's talking about the people that don't believe in Him. The people that don't believe in Him, they associate partners with Him. Allah said that when they're traveling in the ocean, and everything is fine, everything's going okay, they suddenly see the waves and a storm coming. And that's when they leave behind everything that they worship besides Allah, and they turn to only Allah. And actually there's an incident in the time of the Prophet, there was a man by the name of Ikrimah, who was the son of Abu Jahl, who was one of the biggest enemies against Islam. When the Prophet came with the message, he was one of the biggest enemies against Islam, and so was his son. They tortured and mutilated Muslims. Okay, so they did a lot of crimes. They did a lot of war crimes. They did a lot of horrible things. And because of this, the Prophet, after he conquered Mecca, he ordered that Ikrimah be killed. But Ikrimah, he heard this, and he knew that he was going to be killed if he stayed in Mecca, so he fled. And when he fled, he went to go into the ocean on the ship. And when he went on the ship, there was a bunch of idols on that ship. And the people had all the idols, that's what they were worshiping. But all of a sudden, a storm came. And when the storm came, then they left behind, the ship captain left behind all of the idols, and he said, we have to turn only to Allah now. No one else will help us. So then Ikrimah, he's on the ship, and he's wondering, how does this make any sense? How come all of a sudden now, when we're in this trouble, we turn to Allah, and all this time we were worshiping other idols? It doesn't make any sense. So that's why after that he actually became Muslim. When he came back on shore, he became Muslim. And I have two personal accounts, but just very briefly, like I had an incident where 2 summers ago, either one summer or 2 summers ago, I was rafting, and the weather was beautiful in the beginning, and it became really stormy and cloudy at night. Like a few hours later, close to night, and all of a sudden the wind started picking up, and we really we were going downstream in the river, but for some reason we could not move downstream anymore. The wind was so strong that it was actually pushing us upstream against the current. And we were trying to paddle to the nearest island. I was with my family, and we were trying to paddle to the nearest island, and we couldn't. So we kept on going and going, and I'm telling you, the state of my family completely changed. I have never seen my mom like that in my life. Everyone was like, they just completely turned to Allah. They didn't care about anything else. They were just like, keep on begging to Allah for mercy to save us from this torture, or this trial. And then after that, at that time of extreme need, people turned to Allah. Another incident where I had one of my friends, actually, and you might say this whole turning to Allah thing is just for people that are Muslim, but it's not going to work for people that are not Muslim. It's not true. Actually, I personally have a friend, and I've heard many accounts of other people that have friends that are atheists that tell me things, but I personally have a friend that's an atheist, and he's literally been debating me since high school. Like we've been debating about whether God exists ever since that time. And recently he's had this illness that has completely messed up his brain and his mind, and he texted me out of the blue, so weird. I hadn't talked to him for ages, and he suddenly texted me out of the blue, and he's like, I think I believe in God now, and I really think, I don't know if I agree with everything in Islam, but I think there is a higher power, and I believe in a creator and stuff like that. So it's crazy. That's just one incident. This happens all the time, and there's other incidences, but we don't have time to talk about that. But this is one of the reasons.
Are we just talking about the old phrase, atheist until the plane crashes?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And Winston Churchill had a famous quote. He said, there's no atheists on the battlefield. You guys get it? Because like that, if in times of extreme need, you turn to God. It's just natural. It's in you. Every single human being has it. Okay? Reason 2. So these are, once again, we're going over reasons why the Quran and the Sunnah don't really spend much time trying to prove God exists. Okay? So, oops. Okay. So the second reason is that creation proves the Creator. I mean, this is kind of an obvious proof, like one of the reasons. And the Quran evokes this many, many times. It does this a lot. One example we have, and this you guys talked about last time when you guys were talking. You guys had that Hamza Zortz's activity, right? So you guys actually did this, right? So this is the ayah that I guess you guys were referencing. Allah talks, and this is like probably one of the only ayahs that Allah directly, like some scholars say that Allah is directly referring to atheists. He said, "Were they created by nothing, or were they themselves the creators? Or did they create the heavens and the earth? Nay, they have no firm belief." So Allah is reasoning with them that, can this really be that all of this creation is just out of the blue by chance? The perfection of the creation is just out of the blue, just came by itself? Like, can that really happen? So Allah is evoking this sense that the creation proves the Creator. The early scholarly texts don't even try to prove Allah's existence. Another ayah in the Quran, this one I think is Surah Ibrahim, verse 10. So in chapter 14, verse 10, Allah says that the messenger said, "Afillahi shak." Is there any doubt in Allah as the Creator? Is there any doubt in Allah? Does that make any sense? So in general, the messengers took this as a given. They said, can there really be a doubt? Like, really, can there be any doubt about Allah as the Creator? So we see this, that even the messengers of the past used the same idea. The third reason, signs of creation. There are many signs of creation, and we could talk about a lot of them, but this is just an ayah I've included. We're not going to go through everything right now, so you can just take note of the ayah and take a look at it at your own time. So it's Al-Baqarah, verse 164, 164. So if you take a look at that, you can see like some of the signs of creation. Allah points these out. Allah is reminding us of these signs, that like the perfection, the alteration of the night and day, the whatever different things that Allah has created, He's trying to remind us of that. And if you look at the prophets, whenever they were calling their people to Allah, they used this. They started to remind them of the signs of creation. They started to tell them, these are all the things that Allah made. So, okay, so this fourth reason. Okay. Fourth reason is the sending of prophets and books. So, once again, this is the fourth reason we're talking about why Allah and His messengers don't spend much time trying to prove His existence. Because He sent messengers and books. And when you think about what a messenger is, he's approved because of who he is. So if you look at the life of the prophet, 40 years he was established as a man of truthfulness and trustworthiness. Then it was him calling the message. And the people saw him as someone that was so trustworthy and truthful, they said there is no way he's going to be lying about God when he doesn't even lie about his personal affairs with human beings. There's no way he would be lying about the divine. It makes no sense. So one is the fact that the messengers, who they are, these special people. The second thing is what they're calling to. Like the message itself is perfect. It's a beautiful message. It's something that is in line with their fitrah. It's something that they know. It's like this is in line with what's in me. So it's something that I need to follow. That's why they called them to it, because they're calling to what's inside of them. They have it inside of them. And the third thing is their miracles. So Allah also gave these messengers miracles with them, so that they can be further, give them evidence that they're prophets and they come with a special message. Okay, to give them legitimacy, Allah sent them with miracles. I just included this too. It's an interesting fact that statistically over 50% of the world believes in Abrahamic faiths. That's actually very interesting. Like whether it's when I say Abrahamic, I mean like they're like Jewish, Christian, Muslim, all the different denominations generally going back to Abraham. It's very interesting that over half of the world's population agrees on this idea, right? It's something that's very interesting statistically, because that shows some element of truth in it, that there's some element of truth that it grew this much. Yes?
I think I should also add the point that the people who even disbelieve against religion usually uses the Abrahamic idea to debate against, which means like they see that as the main opposition. Their main problem is not against polytheism, but more like.
What's that? I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Is that even people like atheists, like Dawkins or Hitchens, their main focal point is against this idea. This is the idea they find credible enough to fight against. Like anything else, they just immediately, what do you say, discard as an idea that's too improbable.
Right.
This is the only thing they find credible enough to debate against. So
Right.
that itself,
That's an interesting point, actually.
because you don't want to debate against something that you don't find is worthy enough to debate against in the
Right.
first place. If you think that this is too stupid, nobody will believe in this, so why should I even debate against this, you know? So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. Okay. So I also wanted to just talk a little bit about miracles, because in the first class, when I asked everyone, how does Allah prove himself in the Quran? And how does the Messenger prove Allah in the Quran? A lot of people said, and a lot of people will say, miracles, like the miracles of the Quran and all that stuff. That is very important. I am not saying that stuff is not important. It's extremely important, but miracles are not the primary argument. They're used to bolster the argument. Okay, if you see, the prophets were not sent just to perform miracles. They came with a message. That's why they're messengers. They came with a risala. They came with an actual message to the people. So they used miracles. Allah gave them miracles to give them legitimacy, but that was not the focus of what they did. So, like for example, the Prophet ﷺ splitting the moon. This in the Quran too. But that's not what he did every day. Like the Quraysh, like he didn't do that every single day. Like the Quraysh asked for a miracle, then he asked Allah, and then Allah gave him permission to split the moon as a miracle to show them. And even after that, they didn't believe, by the way. So that's not the purpose. Like the purpose is not the miracle. That's just a means to support the argument. Also, Allah challenging anyone to bring a book like it. Even the fact that the Quran is a literary miracle, that fact is a very beautiful and important fact. But how many times does Allah challenge the people to bring a book like it in the Quran? How many times? Like 3 times, right? Yeah, it's more than one. Allah says, bring a book like it, or bring an ayah bring like 10 ayahs like it, bring a chapter like it in the Quran. So, but it's not like that's the whole context of the Quran. You know, the majority of the Quran is telling them about the message. What's the actual message? Is believing in one God. It's following and obeying the messengers, whatever they say. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay. So I just wanted to mention that. But it's also an added argument for one of the reasons why Allah does not spend time proving himself. You know, we can talk about this a lot when miracles are mentioned in the Quran and literary miracles of the Quran, and it's very beautiful to talk about that also. Okay, so just a summary on what we've talked about, just to wrap things up. Just some things on Islam's approach to proving God. So first thing is, it takes it as a given. Okay, so the reason why it takes it as a given, like I mentioned, is something ingrained in us. Every single human being has it in them already. So, and it's also self-evident. You see all the creation around you and all that stuff. Human beings know that there must be some higher power. That's why most atheists are dead. There's not very many atheists. There's a lot more agnostics, or people that believe that there's a higher power or someone that created something, and they believe that, you know, there's fewer people that believe that everything came about by chance. Okay, so it's something that's why Allah doesn't spend much time talking about it. Also, an interesting point. Most atheists don't deny God out of rationality, but rather desire. I'm making a claim, and I'm not saying this is true for every single atheist. I'm saying this is in general. Atheists don't deny God out of rationality. They do it out of desire, because they don't want to conform to a religion that tells them how to live their life. Every single atheist that I've given dawah to, it all boils down to this. When we talk about how to live, morality, society, and all that stuff, they don't feel like they should be governed by something else. They feel like they're good enough to come up with those rules themselves. So they don't want to conform to any system or way of practice. They just want to have the freedom to do whatever they want. And there was actually an ad campaign in San Francisco that said, "There's probably no God anyway, so do whatever you want." If you think about it, Why is it that because there's no God, do whatever you want? You know, like it's like the real reason for atheism is just desire. You just want to do whatever you want. Like you don't want to be governed by something else. And actually, one of my atheist friends, we were talking, and like he asked me a question, like a strange question. He said, "What if I just want to deny like one ayah in the Quran? Is that, or one verse in the Quran? Is that something wrong?" I said, "Yeah, it's something wrong. Like if you believe this message is perfect, why would you deny like one verse out of it? You know, because they just want to follow whatever they want to follow. Like they don't want to be restricted. They don't like that feeling." So that's an interesting point. And this ayah in the Quran kind of hints at this. Have you not seen him who takes his own lust? He takes his own hawa, his desires, as his God. He takes his desires as his God. So we're not even talking about a physical idol. It could be that his desires is his God. So a lot of atheists actually do have an idol. They just don't have a physical idol. They have it inside, their own lusts. Okay, and last point I wanted to mention on this slide, and we have just one more slide after this, is that there are a lot of proofs to God's existence. Actually, if you study this in philosophy or whatever, there's a lot of like proofs to how we can say that God exists and everything. We are not going to go over them in this class. Number one, because they're really complex. They're really hard to understand. And I think you can take a course about that at Rutgers. And the second thing is that if Allah is really the creator and He expects everyone to believe in Him, does it make sense that He would want us to come up with this complex, crazy idea to finally prove that He exists? Does that make any sense? Like if someone is illiterate, they are a villager, they have never went to any schooling or anything like that, does Allah expect them to come up with this higher level of thinking to suddenly come to the epiphany that there's a God? No. That's why in Islam, it's something that's self-evident. It's not something that you need to prove. So we can go over those proofs, but we're not going to in this class because it's not really needed. Okay. So last thing. Reality is, most people believe in all three parts of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Most people believe in that. Okay? So most messengers, actually the messengers were not sent to say, I am a messenger, God exists, so believe in Him. They didn't say that. What did they say? Can someone tell me what messengers said? If you've seen the Quran, what did they say? Yeah.
Worship none but Allah.
Exactly. That's their main message. If you look at the theme of all the prophets, if you open to any page in the Quran, you read it, something like that will be on that page. Something related to worshiping only Allah will be on that page. And the reason for that is because most people believe God exists, and most people believe these things. They believe that, yes, God is the Rabb, He's the one who makes, they don't have maybe this formal terminology, but they believe in these things. They still, the Quran was not sent for that. That means that the Quran was not sent to prove to people that God exists. And the prophets were not sent for that either. Therefore, believing in Allah alone is not enough. And as a matter of fact, it could arguably be said that that was not even the purpose of the messengers. The purpose of the messengers were not for this whole branch of Tawheed. We studied it for our understanding, but this is not even the main problem. The main problem is something else entirely. We haven't even started that branch yet. And that branch is a very large branch that we're going to talk about. That's why this is very brief, and it's good to get an understanding, and it's important, very important, but the next branch is where we really need to study it in depth and figure out what's the real reason why the prophets were sent. If they were not sent for this, then what? So we're going to do that next class, inshallah, which is the last class. Yeah.
Isn't next class Eid?
No, yeah, that's we're not going to be doing next week. We're going to do the following week. So after our Eid banquet is on the 21st, I believe, of October, and the next day we'll be having the last Iman of Steel class. That's where we will introduce this most important topic. Unfortunately, we can't go into any depth. We'll just introduce it because it's just, unfortunately, we only have 4 classes, and I needed to go through this stuff before because we can't just jump into that. Like, it would be very difficult to understand. So that's why we go through this first. And this is also important stuff too. If anyone has any questions on this stuff, or actually, I have a question for you guys first. Can everyone close their eyes, please? Humor me, please. Okay. If you prefer, this is just for my own benefit, I'm just curious. If you prefer the method of using slides to writing on a chalkboard or whiteboard, raise your hand. Okay, you can put your hands down, keep your eyes shut. And if you prefer a whiteboard to using slides, raise your hand. Okay, put your hands down. You guys can open your eyes. What do you guys think won? Which one, which side won?
PowerPoint.
Slide.
Slides.
Everyone's saying slides. What about the people that raised their hand? You guys have no confidence at all. Yeah, it was actually slides. Is that, the people that did slides, is that like all the time or just for this specifically?
All the time.
All the time you prefer slides, so even in your classroom you prefer
On
slides?
Wednesdays.
Okay.
It's Tuesday.
Okay, good.
Which is why you don't.
Well, that's pretty much all I got. Yes?
For your reason number 2, you reference like an ayah from Quran, do you know the verse in Surah? There was in the second. Yeah, that one.
No, that's Surah 14, verse 10. Go. Any other questions? No? How do I know you're understanding this? And I had a teacher in high school that said, if you're not asking questions, that means you don't understand. I don't think that's true, but, I mean, I think sometimes it's true.
Okay, this is not a question from,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a question from me generally, it's a question from Hitchens that what can I achieve by believing in God that I cannot achieve without believing in God? As in, like, is there any act of goodness, of kindness, that an atheist can do that an atheist cannot?
That question will be answered actually in the next class, but if someone else has an answer that they want to answer right now, I'm just curious to see what you want to say.
I don't know, what was the question?
Can you repeat your
The
question?
question was, correct me if I'm mistaken, what act of goodness can an atheist do, right?
No, what
Can
act,
a theist do
yeah,
that an
atheist,
atheist cannot?
that an atheist cannot.
What act of good,
I have an
what act of
answer.
good does a person that believes in God have an advantage over a person that does not believe in God?
Isn't it just the idea that when believers do a good deed, then we're doing it for the sake of Allah? Whereas as opposed to an atheist, when they're doing the good deed, they're not really doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're doing it for themselves or for the other person.
Okay, can you just say a little louder?
Wait, what?
Can you just repeat what you said a little louder? Because they wanted to hear it too.
Is it because when we do a good deed, we do it for the sake of Allah, whereas when an atheist does it, they do it for either themselves or like the other person?
So you're
They're not
saying
doing
that
it
being
for
a
the
theist
sake of
makes you more selfless? Like you don't have any ulterior motive of fame or?
Allah. No good deed is accepted if you're not doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so in that case.
No, I'm an
One
atheist, I don't
second, this
believe
other
in
sister has
that,
a stand up.
if you're going with
If you want to
that.
mention something.
I think like good is like is relative. So the reason we have the Quran, the reason prophets were sent were to guide us to the right way to do the so-called good things, or like remind us what is better for us to do.
You sort of have a point there. So good is relative. The point is, if an atheist says that what act of kindness that can you do as a theist that I can't, you have to ask them that what is your morality of goodness? Like who judges what is good and bad for you? Because Hitchens actually went as far as to say that incest is completely moral if it's done in a safe way, because the only problem that's coming from incest, this was a debate against Tariq Ramadan, and even Professor Lawrence Crowns brought it up against Hamza Sordis, that same thing, that incest is okay as long as you're doing it in a safe way, because the only problem that comes with incest is the fact that genetic defects when the child is born. So it's a scientific problem, not a moral problem. As you can see, they have a different view of morality all by itself. So immediately that argument is moot. What can you do that I can, that is good? Because their idea of good is completely different than our idea of good. But yes, good is subjective.
Maz had his hand up also for a while.
Yeah, one thing you guys want to keep in mind is that in Islam we always consider people's rights, right? Everything has a right. It's all about relationships between people, between human beings, between creation of Allah and human beings, and most importantly, the relationship between the servant and the master. So you can be the best person in the world and give everyone is there do right. You can, treat your parents well. You can treat, you can do all the acts of kindnesses in the world, but that never excuses someone from giving the Master, the Creator, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, His due right, which is to be worshipped and to be obeyed.
And that is what we'll be talking about next class, inshallah.
I have a question.
That is exactly what we're going to be talking about next time. Yes.
I had a question about if you know any information about how when we were all in Jannah with our room and everything like that. I wanted to know about that.
About the fitrah?
Yeah, no, more like when I heard that when we were all in heaven at one point, all our souls. I want to say you instead. We were all in heaven at one point, and I wanted to know about that. Like when Allah SWT asked us, "Who is your master?" Who said what and what did they say? And how was it determined from? I don't know. I wanted to know.
Okay, I need to brush up on it myself, so I don't want to say anything that I don't know.
What was the question?
Yeah, can you repeat it one more time?
How I wanted to know about how when we were in Jannah, like all the souls were in Jannah. I wanted to know about that. Like when Allah SWT asked us, who is your master? What did we say? How was that? What was that saying?
I mean, as much as I know that Allah did ask all of us, meaning we were all physically there. And Allah said that, am I not your Lord? And then, قَالُوا بَلَى. Then we said, Allah is saying in the Quran, then we said, of course. So this is something that everyone said.
So then, that's the thing I heard from like that. Because of that is one of the reasons why Allah SWT doesn't really say, doesn't really try his hardest to prove whether or not he exists, because we already accepted the fact of his existence.
Right.
Well, the point is, if I'm talking to you, I wouldn't try to tell I exist. The Quran is like God talking to you in direct speech. So it's like, I exist, now listen to me. That's not a conversation starter. Then would a Bad walk into the class and go like, I exist and I'm teaching this class, listen to me. So it's just so automatic. He's talking to the Prophet and the Prophet is talking on behalf of him, and now he has to say I exist. That's a little stretch there, It's like the philosophical question of, do I exist?
Yeah.
Don't go there.
And actually, even like the discussion of what the origin of the fitrah is, where does it come from and stuff, like your question, it's an issue that it's a little bit debated amongst scholars. So some have different opinions. Some say that it was at this part that Allah put in the fitrah that was ingrained in all of us. Some say that it was actually when every single human being is created in the womb, that's when Allah puts the fitrah in us. So there's different opinions. We didn't really get into it. But if you're interested in that, on the side, I can relay that information. It just takes a lot of time to talk about those different opinions. All right. Jazakumullah khairan. We're going to pray Maghrib, inshallah. If you guys have any questions, feel free to either post on our RU-MSA group. If you're not comfortable posting publicly, you can ask me. I'm happy to answer. If I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't know it, I'll tell you I don't know. And that's pretty much it. Are we going to pray Maghrib here or there?
Yeah,